I am not a fan of how they chose to end Ahsoka with Sabine. No, not the fact that they're stuck in the same place we just spent all season getting Thrawn and Ezra out of, or not the fact that Sabine is still alive after being stabbed through the gut with a lightsaber when Morgan simply got grazed across her stomach and she died. I'm talking about the fact that as of now, on StarWars.com, Sabine Wren is officially a Jedi. Yup. Personally, I would have preferred them to just leave Sabine as is. She was a cool character all throughout Rebels, and she didn't need the Force or to be a Jedi to do that. She was an expressive Mandalorian who was resourceful enough to hold her own and get out of way more than enough situations using her gadgets and ingenuity. She was special then. Giving her Force powers now just feels like a cop-out, closer to lazy writing than an improvement on her character. When that nice zombie was just sitting there holding up Sabine, I would have much rather seen her reach out with her hand and try to use the Force like she's been doing all season, only to struggle and fail to move her lightsaber, and then she just resorts to who she is and uses her Mandalorian gadgets. I don't know, she could have broken out her whipcord to grab her saber and yank it to her. That feels more on character with Sabine than giving her Force powers does. And I'm fine if she keeps the saber because honestly, a Mandalorian with a lightsaber in their arsenal is awesome. But she shouldn't need the Force or to be a Jedi to be a cool hero, or to be able to survive against bad guys. She went 4 seasons of Rebels without any of that and was awesome. And my problem isn't even that Sabine showed Force sensitivity, she was cooler without it, but if they want to give everyone Force powers now, fine, so be it. In this case, I'm fine if she moves a cup or her lightsaber by the end of the season, but the level of ability she showed just 1 minute after discovering her powers is insane. Massive Force pushes, which by the way, Ezra is wild for trusting her to do this after she only just used the Force for the first time to pick up a lightsaber.
I can't make that jump.
Yes, you can.
I appreciate the confidence.
No, I push you first and you pull me across.
Sabine.
Ezra, I can do this.
No thanks. I choose life.
He must have known she had plot armor, but also deflecting blaster fire with a lightsaber, that takes years of training to do in the field. I know she has armor for when she misses, but she rarely misses. She deflects so much. You remember those little training droids that shoot the younglings that can't see? Yeah, that takes training to do. Also, more Force pushes. I mean, come on, even Baby Yoda's Force bar is smaller than that. Sabine just ends up running around spamming the Force power button after showing off the littlest bit of Force sensitivity. I know Kanan said her mind was blocked, but even still, there was no learning curve. She was just immediately good. I didn't mind seeing her run around with a lightsaber when she had no abilities. I mean, it didn't really make all that much sense, but it looked cool. She didn't have consequences for her actions. Being bad with the lightsaber didn't mean anything. She just gets to try again the next day. It didn't make sense that once Shin realized Sabine had no powers, she didn't just pick her up with the Force and ragdoll her into all the trees. The whole point of a lightsaber fight is 2 Force wielders finding another way to duel, because if they just use their Force powers, they'd be at a standstill. They'd push each other back and forth. But when one person can't defend themselves with the Force, I mean, it kind of feels illegal. I love that when they first brought up the idea of Sabine being Force sensitive, they really showed her struggling with her training as well as with her first attempt at trying to move that little cup. I was thinking to myself, you know what, if they go ahead and make her a Jedi or want to give her Force abilities, they're going to have to start her off so slowly to avoid doing what they did with Rey. Rey was a nobody, never showing any signs of being Force sensitive her entire life, and then boom. All of a sudden, she's using Jedi mind tricks and grabbing lightsabers, moving rocks, floating, shooting Force lightning, healing people. You name it. No training, and she's the best Force user ever. They were going to have to do the complete opposite with Sabine if they wanted to give her powers. Have her train all season only for her to just barely be able to move the cup at the very end of the season. Teasing that she just might be Force sensitive would have been perfect. And then season 2, we could see her train and slowly get stronger in her abilities as she struggles to use them. But nope, after the cup struggle, she did not struggle a single time ever again using Force powers. It just unlocked everything immediately, like she was a Jedi in her past life and she just remembered everything. I don't know why or how Disney has this problem. She went 4 seasons of Rebels without showing any Force powers at all, even while being trained by Kanan, and then plop her into Ahsoka and in 1 season she's mastered everything. You'd think they would have learned with the Rey backlash, but I guess not. Real quick, if you enjoy the video or agree with what we're talking about, go hit that subscribe button and share this video with your Star Wars friends. It really helps out the channel. Now, I do think it was really cool seeing 3 lightsabers run around for the finale, but at what cost? More people just adapting to having Force abilities just seems to take away the significance of what being a Jedi has meant for the last 40 years. In Rebels, Kanan struggles to train Sabine and show her the ways of the Jedi because Sabine is just not that. Sabine is closed off. She's quite literally a stubborn Mandalorian, and her morals or way of living doesn't align with the Jedi way. Kanan reminds us that although the Force resides in every living thing, Sabine is closed off to it. She hasn't opened herself up to be able to use the Force, even if she was Force sensitive. Which, in Ahsoka, it seems like apparently she did open up. I'm not really sure how or why. Ahsoka tried to gaslight her into believing she could help them open the door with the Force. She basically just gave her the second controller that was unplugged and told her that she was playing the game anyways. But it is revealed a couple minutes later that Sabine is in fact Force sensitive. In a moment of crisis, she was able to call upon the Force to pull Ezra's lightsaber to her and kill the zombie. But it almost seems like the moment of crisis was the reason her Force abilities joined the chat. Not because she opened herself up, but because she needed to use the Force. If she didn't use the Force, she would have died, which honestly, I mean, she never had a problem with this in the show either. She's a Mandalorian. She's got tricks up her sleeve and gadgets on her arm. I would have been happier if after trying to use the Force and it not working, she just resorted back to using her Mandalorian gadgets and used her whipcord to grab the saber. She could have gone on the rest of the fight using the saber and not the Force and just left it at that. I saw someone else comment it would have been cool to show the lightsaber lifting up only to pan and reveal it was Ezra using the Force and then he throws it to her. That would almost fit the comedic tone the show was going for more, and even that would have been fine. I don't think Sabine using the Force was the only way that she would have survived. Sabine was very competent without the Force in Rebels. One of the great things about her character is that she never needed the Force. That was kind of her thing, and now it feels like she needs the Force to be special to win a fight. You know what? This was actually a plot point in Rebels. I mean, that's what Mandalorians do. They develop sick weapons to fight Force wielders. That's what they've always done. The Beskar armor, that's lightsaber resistant. Their shields, their jetpacks, their missiles. She's given weapons in Rebels and told that she needs her entire arsenal to stand a chance against a Force wielder. When she puts all of these together and is sparring against Ezra using her gadgets, she's actually able to stand her own. Plus, if Ezra here hadn't forgotten he had Force powers and would stop punching the armored zombies with his bare hands, maybe he could have been more of a help to Sabine. I think it would have been cooler to see her character get fleshed out as this lightsaber wielding Mandalorian who still fights with all of her gadgets like a Mandalorian, but she also has a lightsaber. Shin teased her in the beginning for not having powers.
You have no power.
And I wish it stayed like that. I wish they didn't feel like she needed to develop Force powers to hold her own. It would have been cool to just see her get so good with her lightsaber and her gadgets together that when she shows up to a fight with a Sith and gets teased, she comes across as the underdog. And then you see throughout the fight, she's been training so hard that she doesn't need the Force to hold her own. She uses her saber skills in tandem with her gadgets to catch her enemies off guard and win her fights. I don't think they needed to give her Force powers on top of all of this to make her cool. I feel like they forgot about how loved True Emwe was from Rogue One. He was a slightly Force-sensitive Guardian of the Whills, or Guardian of the Kyber Temple. He wasn't a traditional Jedi, but he trained his whole life to get to the point where he was able to use the Force just enough to help him see to fight while being blind. And he was an immediate fan favorite. Everybody loved this character. He's so unique and so different. They could have tried to do something similar with this, with Sabine, where she's not a Jedi, but she trains so much with a lightsaber that she becomes really proficient with it. Enough to eventually go up against Sith, but instead of the Force as her other weapon, it could have been all her cool Mandalorian gadgets. It would have kept her different and special and unique. It seems like Disney feels they need to make all powerful characters Jedi or Force wielders. There's so much more to Star Wars and building good characters than just that. If anything, Din Djarin felt more like this when he first got the Darksaber. He still used all his other gadgets and his armor sure took quite a beating, but when it was time for hand-to-hand combat or he was overwhelmed, the Darksaber came out. We got to see a little bit of Sabine fighting like this in Rebels in her epic fight against Gar Saxon, but it didn't last very long. If they just left Sabine as is and developed her through a series of movies or a couple more seasons, I think she would have done just fine without Force powers. But now it just feels like a mosh pit of everything that Star Wars fans think is cool. It feels like in this new age of Disney's Star Wars that really anyone could be a Jedi if they just believe hard enough. We went through 4 seasons of Rebels without her developing or showing any signs of Force sensitivity, and then in what, 8 episodes of Disneyverse, she's a full-fledged Jedi with Force powers and deflecting blaster bolts? I mean, that alone is an ability that even Jedi who have actually wielded the Force for many years struggle to do when overwhelmed. Even Jedi Masters. Look at Order 66, Ki-Adi Mundi, Aayla Secura, all the Jedi in the Temple. This shouldn't be some easy thing that a character can just pick up out of nowhere, especially without having the Force. It's something that you train for years to do, and something that you use the Force to guide you to help you have those lightning-fast reflexes you need to do this. But Sabine does this earlier without the Force even, making all the Jedi look like fools for spending any time training to do this. She's got no prior skills or success in Jedi training, and then all of a sudden she can open the door and call her saber to her and throw Ezra across that massive gap. Ezra is more experienced and was trained and is closer to a Jedi level, and even he admits he can't make it across that gap. But apparently now they're even, so he can go half and she can take him the other half? That's such a stretch. They kinda went down the route of what they did to Rey that made everyone hate her. They gave her the most OP set of Force powers without ever spending a day of training. It just felt like she was special rather than she trained her whole life to have these powers. They felt very undeserved. With Luke, he was old and only had a small amount of training from Yoda, but we didn't see him do any crazy Force powers like Rey was doing. He was doing front flips and Force kicks and occasional chokes on the piggies. Rey was shooting lightning and Force healing for the very first time ever and floating in midair. She was doing Jedi mind tricks and eventually got to teleporting a lightsaber to Ben. With Sabine discovering her powers and same day being on par with Ezra, who's been training since Kanan, is crazy. Just like Maul should be the exception for surviving a lightsaber wound, Luke should be the exception for developing Force powers at such a late age. He was the chosen one's son. He was what the entire saga was made around, him and his father. Rey sprouting Force powers just makes Luke getting them at his age less special, and now they did the same thing with Sabine. Every time they do this, it just undermines the need for all the Jedi to dedicate their whole lives since they were little to studying and practicing and making their entire life revolve around training to use a lightsaber and the Force. It almost feels like ever since Disney got the Star Wars license, they've been wanting to create a message and show the audience that you don't have to be special to be a hero or a Force for good. Which they could have done that with Rey if they planned her out properly, but they dropped the ball giving her all the Force powers at once, as well as new ones that didn't exist, making her the most powerful Jedi ever. And then when they realized how absurd that was, they justified it by making her the granddaughter of the Sith Lord Palpatine. With Sabine, they could have done the same thing, but they backtracked and made her special by giving her the Force and making her a Jedi. All uniqueness and chance of being special on her own got thrown right out the window. On a side note, I kinda wish Disney would have leaned into this dismemberment a little harder in Ahsoka, mainly with the zombies. Just slice them up into tiny pieces. Hack and chop your way through them. You literally have a lightsaber. But the only time we saw this was implied off camera with one of the zombies' heads. They're zombies, not humans. Why can't you just cut them up? They can't chase you if they don't have any legs. If anyone else besides Disney made this, it would have been so awesome to see the 3 lightsaber wielders slice up the first live-action horde of Star Wars zombies. Anyone else think that would have been awesome? I think it would have been cool to see the headless zombie get back up and start chasing them again. There's so much you can do with zombies and they just didn't do any of it. The reveal was cool, but after that, take advantage of the fact you've got to take care of a bunch of zombies with a lightsaber now. Like for real? This just falls back into the censorship discussion mixed with Disney not treating the lightsaber how it should be treated. The last video went over every reason why Disney is tripping over themselves, making all the fans mad because lightsabers aren't what they used to be. They don't kill people when they get stabbed. They only kill people that don't have plot armor. Same with Reva in Kenobi. She survived Darth Vader stabbing her twice. I don't know what Disney's problem is with using a lightsaber like it should be used. They're creating an era of Star Wars where the weapons are jokes. The only thing to be scared of is not having enough plot armor to make it to the next episode. Also, how on earth does it make sense that Ahsoka agrees to train Sabine after she refused the exact same thing a year earlier? In Mando Season 2, Ahsoka straight up refuses to train Baby Yoda solely because he has a strong attachment to his dad. Ahsoka was trained by someone with a strong attachment and was right there for his fall. She knows how dangerous it can be training someone who has attachments to be so powerful, and she was worried that Baby Yoda's attachment to his dad might one day lead him to the dark side. We don't need a Sith Yoda in the galaxy doing backflips and zapping everyone. But then Ahsoka turns around and almost immediately agrees to train Sabine, who is one of the most emotionally unstable, irrational, problematic characters we've seen in Star Wars in a while, who also has a major attachment to Ezra, an attachment that is so strong that she already betrayed and left Ahsoka to die, and literally handed the keys to another galaxy to a Sith and let Thrawn return to the universe, starting the next galactic civil war. Sabine is more irrational and has a stronger emotional attachment, and Ahsoka still chose to train her over Baby Yoda? How does that logic make any sense whatsoever?
Ahsoka took me on as her apprentice.
She what? Why?
I would have much rather spent the extra time watching Ezra try to sneak off of Thrawn's Star Destroyer by stealing a shuttle and sneaking out of the hangar. There had to have been a massive fight, right? There's no way he got out of that easy. Plus, I mean, Ezra was with Thrawn. He probably escaped sometime when they showed up to Dathomir. Wouldn't he just be able to tell the rebellion Thrawn's location? And that all he has is an old beat-up Star Destroyer with a couple zombies on board? The rebellion could easily show up with like 4 to 5 ships and boom, Return of Thrawn ends there. Okay, sorry, I got a bit distracted, but like I was saying, I just feel like Sabine would have been more special not being able to use the Force. And even if they chose to give her the Force, please do it at a slower rate. She seemed like she was way too good without any training and just, I don't know. It didn't hit home for me. It would have been cool to just have one character who always tries to use the Force but never does. I don't know about you, but I would much rather like to see Sabine just struggle and train hard to eventually start using the Force at such a late age. What do you guys think about this? Please tell me in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
The Empire was defeated.
Battle of Endor.
The Emperor died.
That's what people say.
That's what they saying.
Who said that?
I am.